So let's talk about the debt ceiling, because this is the next battle in the front here. So over the weekend, Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary, spent the weekend calling Mitch McConnell, who's the turtle boy from Kentucky, who really pretends to care about the American people. Like, he's really concerned right now about spending, when it has nothing to do with making money for Wall Street or getting money to big businesses or other corporate interests, et cetera. Like, he seems really concerned with spending. And now he's really concerned with the debt ceiling. So Janet Yellen called Mitch McConnell this weekend to have a meeting, basically to say, hey, don't play chicken with this debt ceiling. You realize, sir, that the money that we are now voting on to increase the debt limit ceiling is because you, when you were majority leader in the Senate and were underneath Donald Trump, these were things that you had approved. So the debt ceiling is paying for the things in the past. This is not new stuff. Apparently, the phone call didn't go so well. Mitch McConnell held to his guns, basically said, yay, Republicans, Democrats don't even need us right now. Like, you guys can pass this on your own. So basically, they're going to say, we're not voting for this. We're not going to be a part of this conversation. Democrats can raise the debt ceiling if they want to. If they're going to tie it together with this reconciliation bill, then they can just do it on their own. They don't need us. So Janet Yellen is saying, look, we are facing a disaster of economic proportions. If the American, full faith and credit of the American economy, the government cannot pay back these debts that we've taken out, that we've lent money to or borrowed money from, like, we can't pay this back. The whole United States as a reserve currency of the world has a lot of problems on its hand if that's the case. But that's okay. They'll continue to play chicken with this. I mean, I think we're on the verge of the United States dollar not being the reserve currency of the world much longer anyway. You know my feelings about that. But anyway, Mitch McConnell balked at this, said, no, we're not going to help. So that's where Republicans stand. I also love when politicians lie right on television. And Republicans played this game this weekend, and they played it, and they're playing this. They play it every time Democrats are in charge. They're using the debt ceiling as a cudgel to try to paint Democrats as irresponsible tax and spenders, even if they're the ones that actually helped run up the deficit in the first place. They blame it on Democrats, even though it was already in place when they were in power. And they're hoping that you're just too stupid. They're hoping that the American people are too stupid and uninformed. And they don't read books. They don't understand how this entire system works. And they're at it again, holding the full faith and credit of the United States government hostage, filibustering, lifting the debt ceiling. So Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, who's retiring, I guess he feels unfettered. So he's taking like the Mitch McConnell line and lying to the American people about that this money wasn't already paid, wasn't already accounted for, wasn't already spent under Trump and Republicans. He's lying right to the American people. So watch Senator Pat Toomey not even get really pressed by Jake Tapper at all during this discussion.
So
that's the reality. That's the way it's going to happen.
So you know as well as I do, probably better than I do, that the debt limit, raising the debt ceiling, does not apply to the future expenses you're talking about. It's about paying for spending.
Jake, can I cut you? Jake, no, I'm going to cut you off right. That is totally factually false.
I'm going to spread some lies right now. It is not totally factually false. It is 100% true.
False?
It's factually false.
So Jake, just give him your air. Give him your airtime. You know that it's not true. Why are you letting him sabotage an interview?
Yeah, absolutely. There's all kinds of spending that is yet to be approved, including the huge $5 trillion bill that you were discussing with several guests earlier on this show.
Yes, of course.
The annual appropriation bill.
But raising
year.
the debt
None
ceiling
of that's happened yet.
But it's
the appropriation, nothing to do with what the debt ceiling limit increase is about. Again, a total canard. These politicians, I mean, just liars, liars, liars.
It's about the spending that Congress has already approved. That's why we're hitting the ceiling, because that spending is happening.
No,
Jake, I've just told you how you're incorrect. So you want to continue to push me on this false narrative here? Look, Jake,
And he did use the word factually, which means he cannot be lying.
He cannot be lying.
If I say factually before I say something, it must be true.
I mean, this iced coffee in my child's like penguin mug is factually delicious.
Jake, I've just walked you through spending that has not yet occurred, but our Democrat colleagues want to engage in. They are going to dramatically increase the amount of money that will need to be borrowed because they want to engage in all this spending, and they want the authority to borrow it now.
So, but Senator, even if
I don't agree with that spending.
Okay, even if the $3.5 trillion spending package that's being discussed, the budget reconciliation, and the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, even if those were tabled in perpetuity, would Congress have to raise the debt ceiling or not?
So you mean if, like, what your little hypothetical piece of this is taken out of it, like, would you agree that we have to raise this debt ceiling?
At some point we would.
Okay.
At some point we would, yes, but hoping that it only falls under a Democratic window so we can blame them again.
That's
by
my
a smaller
point.
amount.
But
that matters. The timing of this is coming much more quickly, and the scale is much greater than it would otherwise be.
Right. Next month it would happen instead of next week. But that's my point, is that this is already about spending that already occurred, including $8 trillion of debt under the Trump administration.
No, the way I think about it is
No, so you might be throwing some facts at me here, Jake, but the way I think about it, though, is totally different. Like, when you show me facts, I just think differently. I just go in a different direction. That's how I feel.
It's like the way I think about it is I don't like what you just said to me.
Right. Here's what I just don't like the way I think about it is when people tell me that we spend a lot of money, I say, no, it's the Democrats. I just say that over and over again, and hopefully people believe me.
It is certainly not. The spending that's already occurred, the money was raised for it, either through...
Oh, so the $8 trillion, the money was raised under the Trump tax cuts? $8 trillion? You mean that was all paid for?
Taxes or through debt. This is about future spending, some of which we've already committed to.
Wait a minute. It was paid for through taxes and debt? Have you tried to ever pay a bill using debt? Like, how does that work?
I'm gonna do that on my next power bill. Like, hey, I know I owe you like $150, but I also owe $150 on my credit card. So
right
there you go.
I'm just gonna pay for it with debt and see if that, rob Peter to pay Paul and see if that works. Like,
in the form of the big entitlement programs that are on autopilot, much of which has not been committed to, such as the new entitlement programs that our Democratic colleagues want to launch. But it's indisputable that this spending spree, if you spend more, you will have to borrow more. And the Democrats want to spend vastly more, so they are driving up the need for still more debt in the future to cover all of the spending they want to engage in.
Sure, I get that. But for instance, the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation act, Build Back Better, the Democrats, and I know you oppose this, but the Democrats are proposing tax increases to pay for it. When it came to, for example, the Trump tax cuts, that was about $6 trillion. Most of it was paid for one way or another, but not $2 trillion of it. That was not paid for in any way. You supported that, and that created debt as well.
Well, yeah, Jake, it also created the strongest economy of my life.
So he did admit $2 trillion of it, we didn't have a way to pay for it. He said, yeah, Jake, but I got to say, it did create the strongest economy in my lifetime.
That's just an indisputable fact. Strong economic growth in 2019, record low unemployment rates in 2019, all-time record low for many subsets of Americans, including African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and wage growth that was accelerating fastest for low-income workers without just happening organically because of the strong economic growth. That kind of economic growth generates more tax revenue. We were seeing the complete success of the tax reform. It's indisputable that we had the best economy of my lifetime. And now the Democrats want to undo the very tax regime that helped enable that tremendous economic growth. A very bad idea.
Let me just ask you, technically, a government shutdown could have a severe impact on the efforts to combat the pandemic. Parts of the CDC, parts of the NIH could be.
So he literally, Jake didn't even follow that up. it was met by crickets from Jake Tapper, who just moved on to asking about funding the CDC and the NIH with the pandemic going on, and whether the Republicans would vote for a clean bill or not. Look, as ProPublica discussed in January, the Trump tax cuts built a national debt so big, even before the pandemic, that it'll weigh down the economy for years to come. From ProPublica, let me pull this up here. The king of debt, Trump, promised to reduce the national debt. Then his tax cuts made it surge. And in the pandemic, he oversaw the third biggest deficit increase of any president. It would have been nice to see Jake Tapper bother to point that out to Senator Toomey. Like, those are facts. And so this economy that was so great, did it really benefit lower income Americans? I mean, like, this economy, Wall Street was exploding, of course. Corporate taxes, corporate revenues off the charts.
Well, isn't Wall Street the economy? Wait a minute, what?
Right.
If Wall Street's doing well, we all are, I thought.
Yeah. Aren't corporations people too? Just because Amazon doesn't pay anything in taxes, like, Amazon is a person. She cares about
as a person,
people.
I'm happy to pull their burden for them. I'm glad to pay my taxes so that Amazon doesn't have to.
I mean, it's amazing, these guys. I mean, look, we have a runaway spending problem in the United States without a doubt. But it's all, I believe that we have enough revenue in the United States if it's just marshaled properly. If you look at the money coming in and the money going out, the money going out is we're talking about funding the Iron Dome project in Israel right now. Send them $1 billion so they can build a missile defense system. Let's send billions of dollars around the world. Let's continue to do that. Let's spend $750 billion a year on a defense budget. So Senator Pat Toomey can act all sanctimonious and pretend like, there's no way in the world that we can possibly pay for Social Security for the next 30 years to make sure that that's solvent. How in the world are we going to pay for all these child tax credits for people? I got news for you, that when the lowest among us are actually doing well, they're contributing to the economy, they're buying groceries, they're not food insecure, they're not worried about paying their rent, they're actually contributing to society. By having this net there, it lifts everything up, as we've seen in other countries that have done this effectively. Norway, Finland, almost all of Europe. Iceland. By the way, I don't know if you saw the Iceland news. Did you see the Iceland news overnight or over the weekend? Iceland elected its first all-female parliament.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. First European parliament to have... by the way, I didn't even know... This is how ignorant I am. I didn't even know Iceland was technically in Europe. Like, I know it's a part of the EU, right? But I didn't realize it was actually in Europe. I mean, I guess it's, where do you draw the line? Like, it being Europe. But
right.
Technically, I'd like to go to Iceland. They've got hot sauna or hot baths. And I like a hot bath. Like a hot sulfur bath. So, the debt ceiling debate, not over yet. Republicans want to be all sanctimonious with this and pretend like they have nothing to do with it, when in fact, we're increasing the debt ceiling to pay for the crap that was already accounted for and offered and borrowed from banks in the United States and China, all over the world. I mean, it's not just China, by the way. It's a small percentage of this debt. Mostly it's U.S. banks. Mostly it's like, our friends at close to home. So now you're basically going to say, Republicans, that we don't really want to pay for that stuff. Like, we'll borrow that money and use it, and we'll fund we'll fund bombing campaigns around the world. But when it comes to paying you back, we're not really into that. So that's the very latest on the debt ceiling increase. So just one of two big dramatic moments that we're going to see this week in Washington. We'll keep a close eye on it here. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. You can also become a channel member by going to morninginvest.com/join, where you can stick it to the mainstream media and support independent journalism. We're able to bring you the stories that you won't see on any of the major billionaire-backed networks. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, everyone.